about the recording part. Okay, so there we go. So it looks like we are recording now. I don't know why it doesn't say it anymore. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, um, yeah, I found some issues with I usually record to my computer and then I upload it to YouTube. As you've seen the recordings that I put on are on YouTube. But last week when I show you that the Nollywood sort of previews of some of those soap operas that they do in Africa, somehow they uh, they they caught me for a copyright violation. I mean, I didn't show the entire movie, but it was just a trailer. And so somehow YouTube marked me as a copyright violation, and I tried to figure out what it was, and that's what it was. That they considered a copyright violation. And again, I don't know. So anyway, what I'm trying to do now is trying to record him on the cloud, which But anyway, so still trying to figure out some of that stuff out. So if you haven't seen some of those recordings, I was trying to figure out perhaps a different way than I've done it the first few times. So, anybody sees those? Has anybody seen those? Maybe for review, or maybe if you don't show up. I put them out there just in case if you don't show up to class or something, but I'm not sure that people are actually going to go back and review those. So anyway, so let me get going with the Middle East. We'll finish that up. We'll start Europe. And the test actually reflects that. Realizing that perhaps I'm only going to cover a few items in Europe. There's just not going to be that many questions in Europe. Most of them are going to be chapter 5 through 7, but there will be some on 8. All right. Okay. So let me. We were left off right around the beginning of the Israeli conflict. So let me try to get myself out there. And if it looks like I'm looking at the sky, I have another screen up there, and so I have to look up when one of my other screens is up. Oh yeah. Okay. So so let me share that screen. Speaking of which. And so you should now see the screen where it says the Arab-Israeli conflict. Is that what you guys are looking at?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Okay, so so basically what happened is after World War II, the United Nations simply partitioned what was then called Palestine. And when we saw that video, John Stewart, that they literally just draw some lines to divide the Palestinians from the Israelis. That was the time of what is called the Zionist movement. The Jews, as they were sort of being prosecuted and dispersed around the world, they basically determined that area, what at that time was called Palestine, was their original homeland. And so as there were sort of many, particularly Jews from Europe, from Russia and Poland, they were being persecuted in Europe. And then after World War II ended, they decided they wanted to go into what is now Palestine. And so, like I say, the European powers simply just wanted to withdraw. They didn't want to see anything with the area. I guess at some point they realized really there wasn't much oil in Palestine. And so they just kind of left. And so the United Nations then came in and divided up the territory into a Jewish state and a Palestinian state, which is, it was Arab Muslim. And so literally right at the beginning of that partition, they began to go at war with each other. Mainly the Palestinians were not very happy about it because they felt sort of the ruin of the deal. They got the worst lands. well, the Israelis got, their coastal regions, the nicer areas, some access, some like the Jordan Valley with, one of the very productive areas. Anyway, literally they just started, went to war right at the beginning. As soon as the partition happened, they went to war. And they literally have been at war and sort of metaphorically at each other's throat from the beginning. So initially, from 1948, and so there was the territory. Then after the partition, 1947, there were wars and they were fighting each other. Now, slowly, the United States and the European powers began to back Israel against the Palestinians, and so that again led to a lot of the current conflict. So what ended up happening is then, and again, this has been going on, it's going on today. So little by little, the Israelis have been gaining land. In many ways, basically pushing the Palestinians out into what is called the West Bank. And even the West Bank today is, as you can see on the map that I just posted there, there's areas that in the West Bank that supposedly under the partition was supposed to be Palestinian. There's a lot of incursion by Israelis, and most of them have been won by war. I mean, it's not like the Palestinians just gave them up. The Israelis, again, I'm trying to be here as objective as possible, a little bit of history of what has happened, but there's different sides, very a huge division, a huge gulf into what the two sides of the story are. But what is not unknown is, of course, largely because of the support of the United States and some European countries, the Israelis have been basically have military superiority over the Palestinians, and slowly they've been taking advantage of that to encroach into what was then determined to be Palestinian land. So you can see the map. Lots of lands are now under control of the Israelis. The latest movement is what is called settlements. So a lot of the, even in the West Bank and areas that are determined to be Palestinian, there are also settlements that are being built by the Israelis. And I think what you see, the wall that you see right there, the infamous wall that you who got an idea from it, it basically separates the West Bank. And in fact, many settlements that are being built by the Israelis, in many cases, they are surrounded by a very strong wall. Now, so the disputes as it stand today, like I said, this is probably an issue that will never end. As it stand right now is the idea that so Israel is a country, it's an official country. Now, because of the political things of everything, most of the world does not recognize Israel, but the United States does, and a few other countries in the world. So the United Nations in general has not fully recognized Israel, of course, all the Arab countries and so on. But the Palestinians also do not have a state. The Palestinians do not have a country. The Palestinians have simply they have a representative in the United Nations, and they are currently ruled by what is called the Palestinian Authority, that name that you see right there, which is basically sort of like a quasi-government. They run the daily affairs, but they're not recognized as a country. So again, the division between the two, some sides in the side of the Israelis, they say, well, the Palestinians doesn't belong to them. Now, some of the very powerful countries like the United States have veto power in the Security Council. So even if the United Nations say, okay, we are going to give the Palestinians a country, a sovereign state, then the United States will veto it. And so again, that's sort of where we stand right now. Of course, lots of things have happened. There's a lot of fragmentation. At some point, even within the Palestinians, more recently within the Israelis. But the current administrations, and again, no secret, it's not a political opinion or anything, have sided with Israel. They basically have turned Jerusalem, which is, again, extremely disputed. As you show you, the city is divided up in basically 4 quarters. But the United States, under the Trump administration, simply decided that Jerusalem will not be the capital, which is, again, extremely controversial worldwide. Most countries oppose it. But again, that's never going to happen officially. The UN never going to recognize it. Even if it goes to the Security Council, Russia or China will probably veto because they also have a veto power in the Security Council. So again, we sort of kind of what we have then. I'm going to show you a quick clip. It's the most of the recent issues. The most recent one again, the supposedly latest peace plan. Every president of the United States that come in always wants to put in a peace plan. Most basically have never moved further than shaking hands by officials. Today they don't even do that. They can't even talk to each other. But again, the latest issue, the really biggest concern right now is the issue of the settlements. Many Palestinians see it as an encroachment by the Israelis into areas that are supposed to be Palestinian. Areas like what is called the Gaza Strip, where basically Palestinians are basically imprisoned there. They cannot leave those areas. They cannot go into the state of Israel. There are basically walls everywhere, checkpoints and everything. And it's just basically the whole situation for Palestinians. Now, many Palestinians have left the West Bank, and many of them go into neighbor Jordan. There's a massive refugee camp for Palestinians in Jordan. Last estimate that I read, somewhere about 500,000 or so Palestinians in that area in Jordan. And so Jordan is a relatively poor country. Don't have really many resources, so it's really tough for them to have all this extra. And again, they continue to be pretty much at war with each other. But let me show you really quickly, and again, it tries to give you a recent issue, recent developments in the conflict. What I just told you is sort of the roots of it, what is actually created what we are today. So here we go. Let me show you that. And this is as of last year, March 29th, so it's kind of a little dated. There's actually has been some sort of a pause in terms of literally the military conflicts that have been going on every day. But periodically, many, I have Israeli friends that live in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and what you're going to see here is something that they pretty much live in most of the time. And of course, the Palestinians on the other side, they also get
illuminates the night sky, signaling Israeli military airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The strikes followed rocket attacks targeting the city of Tel Aviv, the first in 5 years. Both Hamas and Islamic Jihad denied launching the rockets. Despite those denials, the Israeli military blamed Hamas for their attacks and launched airstrikes in response.
Sooner or later, it's going to be clear who's things are leaking always in Israel, in the Palestinian territories. So we will know within probably hours or days who did that. It was a Fajr rocket that is a powerful rocket, targets Tel Aviv. It is a path for escalation, and we know who has the dominance on the escalation ladder. It's Israel.
Despite those denials, the Israeli military blamed Hamas for their attacks and launched airstrikes in response. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system detected incoming sounded alarms, which were heard across the city.
The audio cuts in and out. Professor, the audio is a little rough.
Sorry?
The audio isn't playing very well.
Not very loud? Maybe that's just the way.
Are you able to put subtitles on the video?
Huh?
Are you able to put subtitles on the video?
Not in this particular one, because this one is most of the times I can, but this is not a direct like a YouTube one. I just got it right of a newspaper article. You know, as you know, most times I can. So I think maybe because it wasn't on actual YouTube, sometimes the volume tends to be real low in some of these. But all I wanted to do with this video is to show basically what because of the Palestinian-Israeli situation, what people in those areas live with. The Israelis always fearful of attacks by the. But on the other hand, the Palestinians are under constant threats. Also, you know, again, as you can see, they kind of blame each other. Who started what? So the Israeli would say, well, we started sending missiles because we had some coming from the Palestinians, and vice versa. The fact of the matter, like you say, it is one of those again that is continued. Right now, the politics in Israel are extremely convoluted. The prime minister Netanyahu just had an election. He really can't form a government because there's no clear majority. He's also under investigation for corruption. And so things are really fragile on the Palestinian side, like, I mean, on the Israeli side. And the Palestinian side, again, there's some fracture in what they call Fatah was like the old version that Yasser Arafat used to run. Most of the Palestinian Authority who's running things in Palestine is run by the Fatah version. Hamas is sort of like the United States calls them a terrorist group. Most countries don't, but they are sort of they have a different tactic because they're not recognized by most of the world. They're not, and they consider terrorists by the Palestinians. They're constantly attacking them. So, so again, it is that division within Palestine as well. So anyway, so again, that is a conflict that is going to keep going. If any of you in the future are able to be get into the diplomatic corps or get into some important position of power and are able to deal with this issue. Now, do you hear me now, or was it just the audio or the video? You hear me okay now?
Yeah, it was just a video
Yeah, so,
audio.
like I said, the videos sometimes are not somehow their volume doesn't come up as strong as it should, and I always try to put some what do they call it, titles in it when you can read it. Now, so there's a lot more instability in this region. In Syria, the current major instabilities in Syria. There's a civil war going on, two sides fighting against each other. The current government is very autocratic. Assad, and basically it's a dynasty of families that have been running Syria for a long time. In just about like what we briefly when I mentioned Yemen, is this conflict between the Arab countries, which is somewhat united, and then Iran, which again is not Arab, it's Persian. But there's sort of the two movers and shakers in the Middle East in terms of the power structure, and so on. So because of that instability in Syria, there have been millions of people that have left either to other countries and become international refugees, or you know, as internal refugees, IDPs. And again, so you see these refugee camps all over the region. Again, many of them have gone into neighboring countries like Iraq, although they have their own problem. A lot of them end up in Jordan. But in Syria, most of them end up going north towards Europe. And they go over to the desert, and some of the pictures I showed you earlier about in Libya, where people use it as a springboard to Europe. Many of them in that are Syrians that end up in those areas trying to get over to Europe. Now in Iraq, of course, the U.S. was involved in a war there. Prior to that, Iraq was heavily involved in a war with Iran that was devastating for both countries. Thousands of people died. They were using gas, poisonous gas against each other. So people were very, they got through a lot of stuff on that. And then after, the Saddam regime, Saddam sort of brought, again, with different sets of opinions on that, brought some stability to it, but by using a very strong hand. He was non-sectarian, so basically, Iraq is weird in that the southern part is mostly Shiite, which is allied with Iran, right? Iran is Shiite, which is not they're more Sunnis than the Shiites, but the Shiites, although they are a minority in Iraq, they're very powerful and they control a lot of affairs in Iraq. Now, Saddam Hussein came in the middle, and he was basically, he didn't take a side. He was trying to run a government, or I don't know correctly, but he was trying to run a government that was not siding with any faction of Islam, and that sort of made him give him some staying power, but he usually used very brutal means to keep things down. Of course, after that, the United States got involved. They took Saddam out. They, and basically the violence went crazy again, to the point that ISIS, many people say that that's where ISIS was born, basically as a result of all that chaos that resulted after those wars with the U.S. And even after Saddam left, it left the place very. And so this whole concept of sectarian violence is very present in many places. Like you see civil wars in Syria, that you have smaller groups that are basically fighting for territorial parts in different countries. ISIS is an example of that. They saw the sort of instability that was going on in Iraq, and they saw an opportunity. Again, they are a militant Islamic group, very Islamist, and they adhere to some very extreme parts of Islam, and they have been causing havoc in there. They took the northern part of Iraq, bordering with Syria, sort of the, again, just like cartels in Mexico do. When there's a vacuum in power, they jump in. They go in and they take a hold of that territory. That's basically what ISIL did. This is probably a little outdated as well. This is just a map that shows you. I don't remember where I last updated it. I think it's also a video here, but let's see. There's a map here that I usually show this one for. I don't know where it went. It looks like they changed it. Let me see. Yeah, on the latest, a lot of the battles. Let me see. Yeah, I think this is sort of like the latest that we have seen. Yeah, also the sound is pretty bad. But this is showing what basically ISIS got run out of the part in Mosul where they actually kind of covered. They were dominating, and so the influence has basically been diminishing. Like I say, the a little bit north of that were helping the United States and European allies to sort of take ISIS out, and they sort of diminishing power. But again, things shift so quickly that any little shift in sort of the political situation in some of the countries involved, it gives rise to other people. Again, some of the latest actions by the U.S. in Syria, many see as an opportunity for ISIS to sort of come back again. It has been coming back in some areas. Again, it continues to be ongoing. I mentioned the issues in the Arabian Peninsula, in Yemen in particular, towards the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula, the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, that they're using the civil war in Yemen as a sort of a battleground for trying to battle both sides. The Saudi Arabia is allied with the U.S. They get weapons from the U.S. Then the Iranians, although they deny they're not involved, the same way as the Saudi Arabians do. But the fact of the matter is that thousands of people are dying in Yemen as a result of this conflict. Again, in terms of Iran, some people see that there's a growing influence in the region. Just before Trump came in, the U.S. and Iran have come to some sort of an agreement on Iran will desist from creating nuclear weapons. But again, Trump came in and that basically threw everything out. And now Iran is basically seen as an outcast again. When countries like that are outcasts, they become dangerous. And so, and they feel that they need to exert their influence. And the way they do it in the Middle East is through military power. So they're trying to basically, they get involved in areas where they have Shiite minorities in most cases, like you see Yemen, and they always try to support groups that are sort of leaning towards their interest. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, especially in the Middle East, that the powers of different groups, they tend to, the movement of one creates a vacuum, creates an opportunity for someone else, and it's a constant shifting going on. In Turkey, of course, Turkey is relatively pro-Western. They have a relatively autocratic government in Turkey that tends to side, they're Islamic, but the government is actually secular. They're not Islamist like Iran is. They're not a theocracy. So they run sort of as a secular government, but very like a stronghold. It's just a very authoritarian type of government. They prosecute any dissenters, in particularly Kurds. The Kurds, again, the southern part of Turkey is heavily Kurdish, and the population there is Kurdish. They would like to have their own country at some point, but the Turks see them as terrorists, as invaders. So anyway, and like I say, I can go on and on. I took these classes in the 80s when I was in my undergrad. Took Israeli Middle Eastern politics, and the issues were just a little different, but they're still the same. It boils down to religion battles, access to territory. At one point it was the U.S. versus the Soviets. The Soviets backing some group, the Americans backing other group. The personalities change, but in some cases the root of the issues remain the same. And, I may sound satirical here, or may sound sort of fatalistic here, but that's the reality. And they're not going to go away. Now here's what's happening. There's also, like in many parts of the world, there's a lot of gaps between wealth, the wealthy and the poor. And the wealthy countries are usually those that are very rich they have oil and gas, like a lot of these Emirates around the Gulf region. And then other nations that do not have oil, like Jordan. Israel doesn't have it, but they have a few other resources and a lot of support from outside countries. So it sort of almost boils down to that. And of course, the political instability also impacts the economic struggle that some of these places have. Yemen, for instance, is one of the poorest countries in the world. The fact that they are engaged in the civil war, it doesn't help when hospitals are being blown by missiles, and it is going to destroy your infrastructure. Again, the capital of Yemen is one of the fastest growing cities in the planet. And again, one of those dilemmas that I told you. I was just reading about that. I've always been really curious about that. Why is it that in areas of conflict, why is it that there's usually a lot of growth? It's like people have a lot of babies, and there's so this desire to procreate, right? And apparently, I don't know if you read about that. Apparently, they're expecting a baby boom after this crisis about this COVID-19. Well, not because people are bored with it. Some people say, "Oh, well, yeah, you're not doing anything," so But it tends to be psychologically some sort of a survival of the species type thing. That a lot of people, when they see the end coming, so to speak, they tend to want to procreate. So again, I was reading some of that in psychology, what's going on with this crisis that we have going on right now, and it made me think about what goes on in some of these countries, that there's so much conflict, there's so much death, and yet they're some of the fastest growing. Syria, for a while, was one of the fastest growing countries in the world in terms of population. So anyway, so now, of course, there's a lot of interest in a lot of these countries, despite the political instability, despite the fact that some have no oil, to try to broaden their economic basis. So here's a little bit of an idea of the differences in terms of where people are with regards to their economies. You can see Kuwait, $84,800 a year. That's their GNI per capita. I mean, imagine that. That's an average, right? Of course, there's people that are way wealthier than that. Qatar, 128,530 per person, right? In many of these countries, they have like a guaranteed income. There's no taxes. They're just so wealthy, and it's not relatively small, but of course that says a lot. But then you have places like Sudan, where their GNI is like 3,230. The Gaza and with the Palestinians, the West Bank, 5,000. And again, it goes. There's a big differential. In terms of the Human Development Index, relatively low in most places. Again, with the exception of some of these Emirates, Bahrain and Kuwait, Qatar, of course, have really high Human Development Index. Most of the needs of their citizens tend to be fulfilled. Population living under today, Egypt is one, had 50% of those. Palestinians, some of the numbers in Palestine, they tend to be not very accurate, or just at least not clearly reported. There's no government in there. Very quasi. Again, Sudan, 44% of the population. Yemen, again, under that situation. Mortality rates in Sudan, Yemen are going to be among the highest one in this region. But again, it has also changed, and that's in most of the developing world because of improvements on sanitation and medical dependence. When you look at these demographic trends, they come in the 1990s. Literacy is relatively high. Basically, even the poorest countries have a pretty high literacy rate. Index inequality is kind of bad. And basically all countries, even the wealthy countries, have a really bad gender inequality. Remember, in this case, the index, the lower the index is, the better off they are. So the higher the number is, the worse off they are in terms of gender inequality. So you can see a lot of countries basically not being very good in terms of gender equality. So here's what's happening in terms of the politics of oil. Again, these were done, 2016, 2017. Things changed very rapidly. Today, oil is basically worthless. I don't know if you heard about that right now. Yeah, I know it, Naomi. Yeah, it's again. I think this whole idea of survival, or sort of I think it's a very primal a need on humans to sort of procreate, and when they see death, I mean, relatively speaking here, but I mean, yeah, I've seen death around us, and I think there's a feeling that might be what's happening in some of these conflicted countries. Now, so when we're looking at the oil distribution within the region, you can see production. The map on top shows you the production of crude. This is again 2014. The numbers haven't changed that much, but you see most of them are located, in terms of the production, are going to be located around the Gulf region, all those Emirates. Talking about, because the United States is the top producer nowadays, and so is Russia. When you look at natural gas, basically the same actors as well. And again, so you can see then in comparison, with the exception of Venezuela and in Mexico and Latin America, the largest production, the largest reserves of oil are found in the Middle East. And now, of course, the politics today with the decrease in the demand of oil basically made I mean, you guys see what's happening when you're saying that oil is basically negative value? It's running a market, right? If there's no demand for the price is going to go down. And because there's almost zero demand for oil right now, the price is not worth it. The oil is not worth anything. It was literally for a while, it was trading at a negative value. So that means let's say if you were Saudi Arabia, for instance, you had tons of oil, you couldn't give it out. You couldn't give it away. Because people, well, I don't need it, I don't want it, I have too much already. And so, for the most part, people were trying to just, and then of course the other thing is, okay, and let's talk a little bit about OPEC here. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. It's a cartel. It's not an official organization. It's not a state-run organization. Countries belong to it, but they simply is a cartel, meaning that they come into an agreement to decide what the prices of oil will be. And not so much the price, but the demand. They can control the demand and supply of oil. OPEC got together very recently. Now, the US and many European countries are part of it. A lot of Middle Eastern countries, countries like Nigeria, Venezuela, and Mexico, it is part of it. Now it was refusing to participate for a while. But so these are countries that export a lot of oil. And so they said, okay, they got together, and when the price of oil is so bad, they try to cut production. But at the same time, they couldn't agree on that. They said, well, but the Saudis, will say, okay, if I cut production, will Venezuela cut production? And Venezuela said, no, we can't do that because my people are starving. And Mexico said, well, we already having a lot of problems. In fact, Mexico for a while was refusing to curtail oil production. Eventually, they gave in, and they. So this is not a non-government organization, but because they're so powerful and they can come together and decide basically the supply and the demand for oil. So they're having problems right now. Now, of course, there are also more traditional official organizations. They have groups like the NAFTA, which is the Greater Air Free Trade Area. All the Gulf, all the Arab countries got together. Again, they get together just like any other part of the world to sort of get some bargaining power in terms of trading, particularly with Europe and the United States, but largely with the European Union. They also have organizations that are Islamic in nature, trying to help Islamic countries. Most of them are part of that. So there's Islamic Development Bank, Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. So the efforts for some of these countries to come in and to get together. Cassidy, I think you have a point there. I think that this is one of the, some of these crazy things we've seen with this COVID-19. I mentioned when it comes to global, to sort of like pollution. I mean, because factories, because not a lot of cars are out there, the air is cleaner. I know you're in LA, Cassidy, and from what I hear, I mean, I haven't been down there for a while, but I hear that the air is clear, very little traffic in the freeways. I was talking about how in places like in Venice, you can actually see the water is so clear, less pollution. And so this is one of the things that people are hoping that, like just a lot of other things. We've seen, even conservative people say, oh, government is the problem, but they're seeing that there's a need for that. And so a lot of people are hoping that with this whole thing going on with COVID-19, that perhaps people will rethink the way we are doing things. And one of them, of course, the hope is that we can see, if we cut pollution, the CO2 level will go down, maybe we'll start seeing some effects in the planet in terms of this whole crisis with global warming and so on. Again, we don't know how long this is going to last. I mean, it's only been a couple months or so that has been going on with this. It's likely to have an impact, but in terms of long-lasting impact, perhaps not. And but again, some people are seeing some hope that perhaps it can give people some pause.
I heard the same thing. I was talking to somebody in Spain, and I heard the same thing about how since there's not as much people going out, that the pollution is going down drastically.
Yeah, like I said, I think we can just see it. And I mean, I've seen pictures of LA, and I've been in LA, especially as you get closer to the summer, you have all this inversion that you see a lot more smog, but it's clear right now. It's very clear. And like I say, yeah.
LA City, you can actually see Gabriel Mountain.
You see the sky. And people are like, wow, man. people are not out. China. It's been China creates this, they call it this brown cloud that basically travels across the Pacific because of so much pollution, so much, factories, and all of a sudden everything has sort of slowed down or stopped, and it's clear, So anyway, so there's a lot of, I don't think that we can say, oh yeah, this is a positive thing, but I think what is forcing people to do industries and even the way we do things in our lives that perhaps maybe there's a different way. And that's about the only thing that something like this can give us it gives us a reason to pause, perhaps evaluate what is going on in our lives. Anyway, so there are some really high income oil exporters like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, some of those ones that I saw with this really high income. And there's, of course, there's a few that are lower. Iran, even though it's an oil exporter, Iraq is, they just don't have as much as some of the other higher. So basically, all those all groups on the Gulf, in the Gulf region, they're the highest, really high income oil exporters. And I mean, you can see the installations, refineries, and so on are so massive that, like this picture that you see here in Saudi Arabia, I mean, they're just imposing. You can see them from basically from satellites. Now, so here's the other thing, that there are countries in the Middle East that do not have oil, and so I have been trying to find ways that they can operate. Yeah, yeah, I know that. There was someone out here that was going on in San Diego. Some of my friends that live near the beach were telling me that you look out over to the horizon and the ocean, and you can actually see that luminescent. It's like this blue something or other. I should probably head over to, I'm not supposed to, but over to the bay over here. But you know, here we have the bay in Chula Vista, so you will have to go out more like in Imperial Beach or so when it's open ocean to actually see. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of that stuff that we see going on because of literally just simple, just less pollution, less CO2 being burned out there. We have to see how long this goes, and then if there's any long-term impacts. And you know, I don't do that as much here in this class, but in physical, there's ways that we can actually measure levels of CO2. Traditionally, levels of CO2 are pretty high at the end of the winter, at the beginning of the spring, because a lot of plants they have no leaves, and so when they're respiring, they're actually sending CO2 rather than taking CO2 and creating oxygen, right? But as the spring progresses, as plants begin to get leaves and as you know, photosynthesis begins to happen on trees, the levels of CO2 go down. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, at this time, again, the levels are going to go down anyway, but it'll be interesting to see later how far the levels of CO2 go down as a result of these or less CO2 being thrown out there. So Israel, for instance, is doing some things in the Middle East to try to having to deal with that oil, and they have become a place for what would be the word to use? They have a pharmaceutical. Teva is a pharmaceutical company. They produce all kinds of pharmaceutical pills and so that are basically sent all over the world. They kind of exported with products like that. Of course, they also have some of their top doctors and hospitals in the world. So they also have become a sort of like a medical center. Nowadays, with technologies, like in some places in India, for instance, where people can telecommunicate. You can literally do surgeries with cameras and stuff. So you can have doctors in Israel. They could be conducting surgeries in other parts of the world, U.S. and Europe. And so they become a sort of a place they can create some high standards of living without necessarily having oil. Now, Turkey has a little bit of oil towards the southern part of the border with Iran, but they're also very diversified. They have a lot more resources, and so for many ways, for Turkey, is not a nation. They're not a rich country by any means, but they have so much diversity in terms of what they trade and what they do. They don't have to just rely on oil. Now, what we see here, geographers will look at some of this stuff like looking at places in terms of the darkness, right? When you see one picture A, you'll see what it was before the Civil War, and you see it now. I mean, there were places that were generally illuminated, but now with the Civil War, Syria basically has gone dark. Many people are leaving, and like I say, a lot of places in conflict. It's just that basically the power is gone out. So very little. We can see stuff like that that gives you an idea of what is going on in terms of the Civil War. But what is also going on is because so many people leaving the region with areas that have a lot of civil conflict. People leave. Young people are just not going to hang out. If you're not conscripted into the military, in some cases, even if you are called to the military, you're just going to leave. I don't want to deal with that stuff. So if you're a doctor in Sudan and Syria, you're going to have opportunities in other parts of the world, Europe, the United States. And so that is also causing, like we see sometimes in Latin America, a brain drain, like what we see in India, that they just even like in India, for instance, we have a lot of engineers, a lot of people experts in computer technologies, but they have no opportunities. I mean, we hear that in Latin America as well. We have doctors that basically have to work in restaurants and stuff because there's just no opportunities. They do have the knowledge, but so in many cases they have to leave the country so they can find better opportunities. Here you see a quick map over here of childhood mortality. I already sort of went to some of those rates against some of the richer countries, and this is a one example of what you can see in terms of the impacts of some of these the poverty levels and how they impact different countries. So the countries that I mentioned, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, with all these conflicts, have a really high level of child mortality. We talk about some of the issues related to gender inequality that exists in this area. It has some of the lowest female participation rates in the workforce in the world. There's a lot of gap between males and females in terms of educational level. Many women are just not allowed to go to school. I don't know if you heard the story. What's her name? She wrote a book. Escaping me right now. I think I wrote it somewhere.
Malala.
Malala, yeah. So Malala, she was this Afghani girl who was trying to go to school and basically was shot in the face by some of the members of the Taliban. And it's not unusual. We hear a lot of, now many people say, well, Islam, Muslims do that. Well, no, Muslims don't do that. It just so happened that some of these fundamentalist groups, they have this perception, and they tie it to religion, saying that women are not supposed to be educated. And so there's a lot of issues with that. There's gaps in the levels of education. Places like Saudi Arabia, for instance, where driving is prohibited. Women cannot drive in there. There's some conflicting changes on that. Supposedly, the current leader, the successor of the king in Saudi Arabia, everybody thought he's very progressive, that he's going to allow women to drive. Well, that some of the women that were leading some demonstrations that were actually protesting against the rules against women driving, they literally got picked up and thrown into prison. Many of them are still in prison, and without opportunity to speak to the world about what's going on. So I'm gonna talk briefly in terms of this whole issue of veil, of women wearing veil. Again, there are some specific things that I mentioned in the Quran, but again, in many cases they are exaggerated, or again, particularly picked up by Islamist groups that say, well, everybody should be covered. So there's a lot of differences, and in fact, in different parts of the Middle world, the Middle East, you'll see variances of sort of how much women cover themselves, to some extreme of a full-on burqa to maybe only just wearing like a hijab. Now, some changes are happening, like you say, in some specific countries more so than in others. In the Arab Spring rebellions, some of the leaders of a lot of these demonstrations were actually women, young women in many cases, using social media. Even those that were prohibited, they would go around it and calling in for some of these rebellions. There are more women that are pursuing high-level careers, and they're more visible in social positions. It's not the norm, But you think of Iran, for instance, you think that Ayatollahs and its theocracy. Some of these Iranian women that you see in the picture here are very active, very involved, and many of them are defying some of these very draconian restrictions again, basically how women are supposed to behave or basically dress in public. So here's just to give you a general idea of what is going on, the differences that you have in different parts of the Middle East. And again, this is the different ways of how women are supposed to be seen in public. From the full-on burqa, like you see on the left in blue over here, with the hijab, where you cover most of your face and you have your eyes showing. I mean, in a burqa, you don't even show your eyes. Right? You have the chador, where you can see your whole entire face. You have the amara, where you just have like you just cover your head, and to all the way to no covering at all. And you can see basically your levels in Turkey, for instance, this group over here on the left, you see Turk women, just women wearing basically Western clothing. Now, in some places, in fact, in most Muslim, when they go to pray, women have to be separated from the men. Even in non-fundamentalist places, there's still a separation of the sexes when they come to praying. All the way to again full-on burqa in public. So you can see sort of how it goes around different parts of the world. Where you see in Lebanon, for instance, 49 of the people or the women do not have any covering at all. But you see Saudi Arabia, where a lot of women are forced to have the hijab or the burqas. And again, you can see the differences based on that. Anyway, this is going to do it for the Middle East. Like I said, the whole issue, I think the video that I have here about Saudi women driving is a little outdated, but while they're saying that the women are now allowed to drive with some restriction, they basically have to have a male with them. But there's also an underside to that some of the activists, women activists, that were saying, it's still not happening. He's saying to the world that women cannot drive, but yet they can. And many of those women were thrown in jail, and they're basically still in jail. Anyway, so again, lots to talk about. This is a very complex region, a lot of issues in the Middle East. If you're going to try to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict, I don't think we will ever end. So I'm just going to get started with Europe and introduce. Like I said, I'm going to leave basically all the way up until 2 o'clock, and then I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes to go over the exam, just to again give you a few sample questions. Now, in the past, I would put in the presentation that I give you here, but because this is basically an open book test, I'm still going to put some. In fact, I think I already posted them on Canvas of some of the sample questions, but there's only 30 questions, so I'm not going to give you like half of the questions. So, but you still have a few that will actually be using, will actually already use in exam. So I'll leave a few minutes to go over that towards the end. So let me just briefly get started with Europe. And like I say, most of the questions I calculated that we're probably only going to do some of the starting part of that. I'm going to play a little bit of music. Anybody knows who MIA is? Anybody heard of her? If you haven't, now
Yes.
MIA is British of Hindu Indian descendancy. His parents are Hindu, Indian from India. And she's very outspoken. And I like this particular song, this whole issue with the EU, Brexit, and borders are Europe is one of those countries where people are together in terms of with the EU sort of brought down the Schengen agreement, brought the borders down, but some issues are coming back, particularly in light of a lot of migration coming in from Africa and the Middle East. So I'm going to start you with that. And like I say, now I warn you, there's a couple of words that may, some of you may find a little objectionable. So not nasty, but a few little words. She is very outspoken, like I say, and I kind of like that about her, that she just doesn't mince any words or what she sees some of the issues. So let me play that, and going from there. I hope. I think a picture of people talking about. Many of these issues again are very current today. Issues with migration, xenophobia, but at the same time, just looking at as Europe goes through, dealing with sort of trying to bring everybody together, uh, getting borders off. In many cases, a lot of these issues with migration are sort of reviving what's all there that sort of created borders to begin with. So we're gonna look at some of the topography, again, the physical geography, environmental issues. We look at some of the, here are gonna be some countries in this region of the world where are basically not only not growing in terms of population, but actually have negative growth, much like we see in Japan, where we see a lot of these negative or zero growth in population. Again, this whole concept, this whole idea of integrating Europe in the midst of all this foreign migration, largely from Europe and Africa, that is sort of threatening to break up this integration that basically I've been working on for the last 30 years or so, is threatening to break all that stuff up. We can look at languages, religions. In many cases, there's the source of a lot of conflict basically for thousands of years in all of Europe. Look at sort of the remnants of the Cold War, and in some cases maybe some new Cold Wars that are developing. We'll see again the integration, and now particularly with the UK leaving with Brexit, basically also this integration of it. And again, we look at some of the current economic and social crises in Europe. The whole Europe is 42 countries. Most of them are relatively, now the region is relatively small compared to others in the world. Now, here's one thing that even though it's relatively small, it's very densely populated. They have about 531 million, give or take a few more since last time these numbers were created. Somewhere about 550 million, I think, is some of the current numbers. But most people are going to live in cities. Most of them are going to be urban. This is a very urban type of country. And again, there has been a lot of cultural diversity, religious diversity. And again, because of that, Europe has been sort of the theater for some of the bloodiest conflict in the planet through modern history. Here's a picture of Europe from the satellite. Again, you can see very green. Most of Western Europe, including the UK, the Scandinavian Peninsula. There are portions in the middle of Spain that tend to be a little more resembling those of North Africa, southern part of Turkey. Now, Turkey, again, it's one of those that is, with the most recent admission to the EU, that it's always sort of playing a sort of in-between role between Europe and Asia. It's got, sometimes they call it that Turkey has this is sort of a identity crisis. Sort of wanting to be European, but yet with a lot of roots into the Middle East. So, and again, that's sort of the role that they have played in their history as well. So again, you can see some of the climate patterns that, based on simply the location and so on, I'll go into those in more depth. Some of the issues that deal to these diverse environmental climates and things that they have. Now you can see where Europe sits in terms of this is set up in terms of the latitude and everything. So you can see that most of Europe would sit sort of between, most part would be sort of what is the northern part of the United States. Many of those areas will fit right into Canada. Many of them, like particularly in the Scandinavian Peninsula and Iceland, would be on top of the Arctic Circle. But you can see sort of if you superimpose where Europe is located in the world in comparison to the United States. You also see in terms of size, these 41 countries that I talk about, they basically are placed in basically what two countries in North America are. But so as a result of that, we go from basically areas like in Spain that would be very similar to what we have here in the southwest of the United States. A lot of sort of somewhat Mediterranean type of climates that we have, although not as humid as you will see in some of the places in the Midwest. But again, this is sort of where it would be located in terms of latitude in comparison to the United States. Everybody sees that map? You see out on the right over here? I think it gives you a little bit of idea of what we talk about in terms of climate and so on in comparison to the United States. There's a long history of human settlement. While not the initial settlements, again, were found in the Middle East and the Crescent area from Mesopotamia, many migrations eventually led into Europe. Some of the most ancient civilizations, like the Romans, the Greeks, had their roots in Europe. So it has been a long history of human settlement in Europe. Some of the main areas that we can divide Europe and some of these important physiographic regions. And in Europe, we look at the European lowland. That's where a lot of the industry, a lot of the economic sort of prowess of Europe is going to be in the European lowland. Now, here's where you could have a lot of agriculture. And if you go further towards like Germany, and in the part of France and the North Sea, that's where all of industry will be. There's a whole triangle right there that is sort of the basis for some of the initial development of industry. Of course, it all started in England, but a lot of it, in fact, even today, those areas, some of the heavily industrialized areas in the planet. Then we have what is called the Alpine system, the Alps. They call it the spine of Europe. A whole set of mountains basically go right through the middle of Europe, crisscrossing a few countries and basically what is called the spine of Europe. We're going to look at some areas, what is called the central uplands. Again, these are also, now the central uplands are a little further down from the areas that are near the water. And that's where you're going to have a lot of raw materials, you're going to have forests, you're going to have coal mines and so on. And here's one of those things that for some reason this version of the text doesn't mention as much. I'll get back to that later on. But the fact that Europe has very navigable rivers, the rivers can actually go from the coastal regions right into the depth of Central Europe. It makes it really important. In fact, it made it one of those regions that was important in navigation in the early 15th, 16th century, because they can do that. They could actually bring products into the port regions and then transport a lot of the materials into the inland. So if they bring in materials from America and so on, and vice versa. They can also take products from the hinterlands, what they call the hinterlands, and then take them over to the coastal region to be distributed around the world. So many of these coastal regions, like in the Dutch, the French, and of course the Portuguese and the Spanish, they had access to rivers inland. They could actually also become places where people can go all over the world from there. We also have what is called the Western Highlands. A lot of them are going to be into what is the Scandinavian Peninsula. Some of the oldest mountains in Europe are found there. We have a lot of glaciated landscape, meaning that in the last ice age, many of the glaciers actually moved that far down. And many of them, as they retreated, they left remnants, fjords, like the picture that you see here, are basically ice that retreated when the ice age went away, and they carved literally those massive valleys that you see there, that eventually with rain and so on and so on, they fill in with water. If I haven't got a chance to travel those places, but it's supposed to be spectacular. But again, those are related to some of the glacier, ice retreat that we had in the latest ice age that we had 10, 15,000 years ago. So again, very quickly, I'm just going to put those, the northern uplands. You're going to see some remnants of glaciers in there. Some of these areas are also, just beautiful, and some of the landscape, many of them were created again by ice that was carved those areas. Many of these areas up into those latitudes tend to be relatively cold, but as you move a little bit further south, you're also going to be able to find agriculture. There are more pictures of the fjords. Oops, sorry. Let's try to show you some of those. Some of the landscapes, as I always do. There's a few more of the alpine, the mountains that were created by the Alps. You see 840 mountains, all running from the basically from the center of Europe to the northern part of Italy, Austria, Switzerland. Many of these have rich in mineral resources, and a lot of them also have potential for hydroelectric power, which is used quite a bit in a lot of these areas. We also have a lot of agriculture in some of these foothills, largely a lot of pasture of cows, because these are areas that are very rich and known for the cheeses, the milk, dairy products, and so on. And of course, tourism, ski season, attracting a lot of people for a lot of their winter sports and so on. Some of the Western Highlands, again, these are the areas where you go further into the interior part of Europe. Here's where you find a lot of the coal fields and what is called the Black Forest of Germany. Some of the largest deposits of coal in the planet. And of course, it's still being exploited quite a bit. As you go again further inland, you're also going to see lots of farming going on in some of these areas. And again, these are the rivers that you're able to ship some of these products from the hinterlands into port regions to be able to sell them or export them or simply just transport them to other places in Europe. In many of these the European lowlands that they have very rich agricultural potential, mainly because of the type of soil that they have. Lowest soils are some of the most productive type of soil. It's a very fine mixture between somewhat sandy soil, which has a very porous, and clay soil, which is retains water. So having a mixture of those makes it relatively productive for agriculture. Many of these are also very good for like grass type of plants and so on, lots of wheat production, pasture production for cattle and stuff like that. So again, general diversity from the different regions of Europe, even environmentally. So here's again, this is the thing that makes them really distinctive, that the rivers are now navigable. You can get from any really port anywhere and be able to get over to the seas. And of course, you are surrounded by seas. You have the Atlantic on the one side. You have you can get access to the Arctic Ocean, and then some of the rivers, of course, on the Mediterranean and so on, that you can move product around in so many of these major seas. That makes them very much a trading place, a place that we're actually able to trade internally, as well as able to trade with the rest of the world. And I'm probably going to stop it right here when just going to tell you some of the major climates that we have. Because of its location, we're not going to have very tropical type of temperatures here, but we do have climates that are very similar to what we have here in San Diego. We have the CS inside the Mediterranean type of climate, the ones that you see in green. Again, if you're in these places, southern Spain, the coast of France, and Mediterranean coast, those are climates that are very similar to what we have here, called Mediterranean. That's where they get their name. You're going to have continental, these climates and the deep climates, what they call severe type of climate. They're going to be very cold. You can see the climate graphs. The ones that are more inland, like we find around Poland, Ukraine, and so on, are going to be a lot more continental because they're a little bit further away from the water. But they're also in the high latitudes, where they tend to be relatively cold. And then you're going to have some, which is a very dominant one. These are again part of the mid-latitude climate, but the ones that are closest to the coast, like what you find in England and northern part of Europe, northern part of Spain and Portugal, is what is called the marine west coast type of climate. So again, one thing that is very important to recognize in Europe is that they're influenced by they call it the North Atlantic current, also called the Gulf Stream. It comes up basically from the around the equator on the Atlantic, and it's in the east side of continents, the currents are going to be warm. So this is a warm current that moves up, goes up from the equator all the way up to to the polar regions and of England, of Europe. And because of that, I mean, England, where it's located, right below the Arctic Circle, it should be a lot colder than it actually is. But you can see that because of that current, it actually makes it a lot milder than it would be otherwise. I mean, look at Iceland. It's actually right on the Arctic Circle, and the southern part of it still has a marine coast type of climate simply because of that current, a warm current that goes all the way out to those regions of the world. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to stop it right here. Like I say, you are more likely to see some of these largely the physical geography questions in Europe, and probably not more than that. All right, so let me point out to you where some of you might already looked at it, and you can tell me if you have. So I have right now the page where the exam is on. Okay, so this is what it should look like for you. Remember that you can find assignments and both in the assignment page, like if you click over here, or you can also find them in the modules. You go down to a current module over here, that's where you're going to see the exam. All right, what you want to do is just going to go, you click on that, and it's just like a math quiz. Like I say, it looks exactly the same process, right? But it's just a different setup. All the questions are multiple choice. They are going to be 30 questions, 5 points each, right? You have 3 attempts. You can make 3 attempts. But let's say you take it once and you don't like the score, you can take it again. And usually the highest score is the one that you're going to be able to use. You won't see the answers until after the deadline, like on Monday. I think I said that to be sometime in the morning. So if you don't like the score that you got, you can take it again, but you won't know the answer. Now, just in case you're wondering, these are set up to be random, to be shuffled, and so on. So what is question 1 for one of you might be different than question 1 for someone else, right? So there's all kinds of protections like that. And like I say, it's open book. I trust that you're not going to try to do anything funky or cheat in any way, but there are protections for you to do that. So you have 90 minutes to complete this. All right, and so again, you can take it up to 3 times, and until you're satisfied with the score that you have. You have up until the deadline on Sunday night. After that, I don't think it's going to allow you to take it anymore. Like I say, you can try before, but after the deadline, because at some point I'm going to put the answers out, or you'll be able to see the answer. You can say, okay, I want to find out why I missed that question. You'll be able to see it. And the score will actually go automatic. So anyway, so again, so you're gonna take the quiz when you're ready to take it. You can have all material, whatever. Again, it's essentially an open book test. Use anything you need to use to take the test. Again, just like a math quiz. I can't do that here because I'm not gonna take the test. So, any questions on that? So. Some people say, well, if it's open book, that means you made it harder. Well, I'm going to show you some of the questions real quick here. I don't think that's the case, but again, you do have a few more advantages than when you are on your own. And like say, just simply because it is online, usually when I do tests online, I mean, fully understanding that they are basically open book. That's why when I do this class online, there's a lot of the exercises that you're already doing here, like the reflection of that, allow you to sort of show me your knowledge in different ways than just taking that test. Right? So let me show you very quickly again what some of the questions would look like. As you can see, we saw in there, I already posted that. A PDF version of that. They're not not all the questions are there. Simply again because there's just less questions than they usually have. So anyway, let me run through some of these real quick. And I already taken both, so okay. All right. So Yeah, remember, we're starting off from chapter 4. Like we didn't really have any questions from chapter 4, Latin America, the last one. So don't forget to have your materials for that as well as you're preparing to take on. So the most populous country in Latin America, you won't see images even here, even in this setup. I could put them in there, but they're not going to be any maps. So which is the most populous country in Latin America?
Brazil.
Brazil. Yeah. Mexico number 2. Primate cities are considered problematic because of what? So we probably have to know what a primate city is. Why would it be problematic? What is a primate city, by the way? You remember what that is? And they're very common in Latin America. We also see those in Africa quite a bit. So what are those? What would be the answer? You can check it out. D, yes.
D.
Too many resources are concentrated in one urban center. So some of these were sort of from the colonial legacy were set up to be like that. Mexico City was the center of the world on America for a long time when it was owned by the Spanish. So it was set up like that, and in many cases continue. Lots of resources are concentrated in one particular city. Which of these countries has a relationship with the U.S. because of NAFTA, which is no longer there now? Of those 4 countries, which is part of NAFTA?
Mexico.
Mexico, indeed, yeah. Maroon societies. What are maroon societies? What do they describe?
D.
Maroon, I even said it in the reggae show. And the reggae thing that I did.
D.
Which one? I know there's a lot of one from there. What is it?
D.
D, yes. So communities of runaway slaves. They call it maroons, cimarrones in Spanish, so they went over to the mountains escaping slavery. The United States was the first colony to gain independence in America. What was the second one?
80.
This one?
80.
What
D.
D as in.
Is it Haiti or no?
It's Haiti. Yeah, so I heard somebody say, I didn't hear they would say D or B. But yeah, it's Haiti. So right after the United States, 1780, I'm forgetting my independence year, 1786 or something like that. Yeah, you can tell I'm a historian. But yeah, right after that was Haiti. Mexico did not get independence until 1810, or at least it started at 1821 was official. But Haiti was right after the United States. Which of the following unites sub-Saharan Africa? Another tricky question, but again, we're always choosing the best answer.
Language.
There's a lot of languages in Africa, especially if you find tribal languages. But one thing unites them all.
D. D is in dog.
Yeah, D as in dog. Yeah, they share a colonial history. They were all a colony, with the exception of one country, which is Ethiopia. They're very proud of that. They were the one country in the entire Africa that was never colonized by any European power. So, which type of plate tectonic is separating basically the east horn of Africa from the rest of Africa? Remember, it's one, we have different types of plates, some that are coming together, some moving up, like going under each other, some are passing each other. Again, you guys, if you're welcome to leave, like I said, I posted some of these answers in there. Wanted to keep you a little later, but if you're interested in this, I just keep going. That's fine. Like I said, I only took roll. So if you don't want to, so which one is this here? Separating the east corner of Africa.
Is it a convergent?
Convergent means that they're coming together. So what is happening here? So we have a plate that's going back through here.
Divergent.
It's divergent, yeah. So these plates, East Africa actually moving away from this one right here. So it's a divergent when they're moving away from each other. The most significant language group in Sub-Saharan Africa, the one that includes Arabic and includes a lot of these tribal languages. Which one is Africa?
Is it C?
C, Niger Congo family of languages. This Middle East, which of these countries comprise the Maghreb? Remember, we talk about the Maghreb, we talk about the Levant, and what is the Maghreb? You guys remember that? That's going to be in North Africa. One way I remember this is if you look at Maghreb, it starts with an M, right? Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. Whereas the Levant, like Lebanon, it would be right around where Israel is at. So Lebanon, Israel, parts of southern part of Syria. That's mnemonic that I have to remember some of this. The world urban core, this Islamic city is called the what? So remember, the typical sort of urban core with Islamic city, what do they call it?
Medina.
I'm going to say A. Now the bazaars are going to be the markets, right? And actually, the actual name for some of these places are called souks. So it's a Medina. That's sort of like a plaza, the equivalent of a plaza in Latin America. That would be a Medina. That's where the urban center of a particular city is. They usually don't have walls, they don't have a mosque, that kind of stuff. Which of the following languages is part of the Indo-European family? Be careful here. These are all languages that are spoken in the Middle East. Which of these is actually related to the same as English, which is French, which are part of the Indo-European? Remembers? It's very different from, which one do you say?
Berber, B.
Remember, they are nomadic groups and they're actually very different from just basically anybody. They actually don't even have any classification. Do you guys remember what I said about the origins of
Oh, Arabic, right?
Arabic is part of that. The other one, not Hebrew either.
Persian.
Everybody did. It's Persian. Everybody thinks about that because you think of Iran, which is the language they speak in Iran, Farsi, right? But actually, the origins of the Indo-European language are supposed to be the food field about it. We talk about it in cultural geography that either was Turkey, the central part of Turkey, or Iran, or basically the origins of this language came out. So Persian is actually part of the Indo-European family. MS English and French and all that. Which city is sacred sites? Again, like I said, I won't show the pictures in there, but sacred sites for all the Abrahamic religions.
Jerusalem.
Yes. Large cities, major industrial, and this is someone we talk about today. Again, you'll see that's only just a few questions from Europe. Large cities, major industrial regions, agricultural centers are located where? Probably that's kind of where a lot of stuff was happening. Near the poor regions.
Western Highlands.
Those are going to be up in the colder region, up in the Scandinavian.
Is it the European lowland? Oh, okay.
European lowlands. That's where you're going to find farming, you're going to find ports, and so on and so on. But there's also industrial areas. You see this, we'll talk about that later, in a triangle between France, Germany, and the northern part of it's a heavy industrial. Which country has the largest population? I guess we didn't get to that. Very likely, I have this question.
The United Kingdom.
Yeah, here's another one that probably is Germany. Germany is actually the largest population region. It's actually also the biggest. And again, we didn't get to these, so chances are I don't think I have any questions. I maybe have like 2 or 3 questions on Europe, and most of them are going to see with physical. So the most adherence in Europe, and we want to cover that, but that's capitalism, Roman capitalism. Most of the as you move south in Europe, in Africa, as you move north, it's going to be Protestant. East Eastern Orthodox. All these languages are Romance languages except one of those. And again, I'm not going to cover any of those. I think I left there. Some of the questions that I put on the test are going to be related to physical geography stuff that I All right, guys. Again, if you have any questions, again, you haven't decided to do this to complete the exam, just send me an email. I mean, I'm not going to give you answers, but if you have any issues with that, it should be pretty straightforward, multiple choices. So,
I have a question.
yes.
Is this for the chapter 4 through 8 or 6 through 9 or 6 through 8?
No, it's four. Remember that we didn't cover Latin America last time. So it's from four to eight, and just very little from eight.
Okay, because I see an exam number 2 that says chapter 6 through 9, and it says July 14, 2019. So I was just wondering why, because it's there. So
Remember, I just showed you that when you're taking the test. So let me look at the gradebook and take that out in case, because it shouldn't be anything in it for that.
well, there's a designated assignment that says exam number 2, chapter 6 through 9. So I was just a little confused about that because I already took the other one.
This is the one that you're taking. The one that said chapter.
Okay.
On the screen right now.
Yeah, I took that one, so that's why I was asking about the other one, the exam number 2, chapter.
Sometimes I leave them in there, but it shouldn't have been live. Sometimes I leave them there because I put them in the gradebook in the past. When we did them online, I can just put them out there even with that. But now that they're graded online, they show up automatically on the gradebook. So I'll take it out just to avoid confusion. But this is the one that you're doing, chapters 4 through 8.
Okay, and then I see the one for exam number 3 for chapters 10 through 14.
Now I'm gonna take those out.
Okay.
That's all left from when I just put them in the gradebook because once I put the test in, you usually take it out. So I'm gonna put those out. From here on, starting with this test, we're gonna be taking them online.
Okay, I also wanted to ask you if you still had the what is it called? The syllabus for the honors contract we made. I think I still have it, but I haven't been to my apartment in like a month because I've been taking care of my cat. So I don't have it with me, but I'm gonna go back to my place probably in the next few days. But I just wanted to ask if you did have it, if you could email it to me so I could start working on all that stuff.
I email it to you.
Hmm?
Because of where we are now, in the past you could have just give them to me, but you can submit them online. I mean, you can email them to me, or you can put them on the inbox. In the inbox, you can also attach Word documents and stuff. So I'll send it to you, and like you say, instead of me having to put it on create separate pages and so on, you can just email them to me.
Yeah, I think that'd be easier for you. For you to just,
Like I said,
yeah.
Stuff at the time we were doing all these. So I even had, whether we still could do it, it turns out that we can. Like I said, for you from that I'm going to check with the honor guy that they don't create a new, they don't create a new, numbers like they did with Blackboard. They actually created a separate file for that, but they don't do that anymore. So you remember that they already confirmed, they sent me a confirmation that you're on the list for that. So once the grade is submitted, I think it's going to be automatically, you're going to pull out, your name is going to come up, and if you fulfill all those requirements, then the age will be added to your grade.
Yeah, that's why I just want to make sure that I get the assignments to you in the next 2 weeks because.
Yeah, because I know this is. So I'll email it to you.
Okay.
I'll email it to you. And thank you. Sometimes I try to keep track with these, but sometimes I got exams ahead of time because they're not online, so they're just there. So once people take the exam, I just start inputting the grade. But because this goes directly into the people, it's definitely a repetition. So, but I'll take them out.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Be healthy.
You too.
Naomi, you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Right. Take care,
Okay.
all right?
You too. Have a good weekend.
You do the same.
Thank you.